All right, welcome back to the Rally Report. Again, we're recording these last two episodes back to back, so shout out to Stuart for doing this. And it's been a couple months since we've done the Power Rankings episode where we dive into the projected top 10 going into the season, and we're kind of in the mid part of the season. I thought, what better time to check in and see how things have sorted out and how things have panned out, or if we're full of shit for how we did the projected rankings or not. But yeah, we're going to dive into that and get, again, Stuart's input and his thoughts on how this season has been panning out, because it has been quite the season so far, and there are a lot of rankings that I would have never expected. And so, yeah, what have you thought on this first half of the season so far?
I like how you phrase that. I think my projections like 6 months ago don't help my credibility. I'm glad that you agree that there's some things that happened that no one could really assume.
Yeah, if anyone's out here trying to reduce his credibility. But we're going to start off with the men's one. And so why don't we just go ahead and see how it compares right now? The world number one is Mustafa Sal. We got that bang on. It was our projected ranking, and he currently stands as the world number one player. Obviously, a lot of controversy around him, and I kind of wanted to talk to you about what you think of him in general, as he's become the best player in the world right now.
Yeah, he is, although right now there's an argument that Diego or even Shibagi is the best player in the world. I just think that I've absolutely loved watching squash recently without Asal involved, like the last few tournaments where he's not been involved in the later stages, whether it was TOC or Black Ball this week. Like, there's been so many great matches. I thought the Diego and Shibagi match that took place like 3 days ago was one of the best matches I've seen in years. Free flowing, bright spirit, and it's like that's what squash can be and should be. And anytime Mustafa Asal is involved, it feels like it is never that way. So despite him being number one in the world, I've loved watching Diego recently. I think he's a joy to watch. I think Shibagi's resurgence, which I definitely didn't predict, but again, he's playing some great squash. The way he played against Diego, taking the ball that early and like just attacking, was just, that's the way squash. I'm not saying it should be played that way, because I realise that there's only a handful of guys capable of playing it that way, but when it can be played that way, it's so much more fun to watch than the stuff with the Asal, where it's just, cross-court analytics did some good analysis on the number of decisions involved in his matches, and like, it doesn't matter how you look at the data, he comes out on top in every single possible way. And just I barely watch him these days, because it just, unless I know that this happened, you should watch how bad it was. It's not entertaining, it's not fun or enjoyable to watch. And it's a shame, because he clearly, like, when he does play clean, he's phenomenally talented, but I don't like the guy. I think he lacks any sort of morals or ethics. I think he's an embarrassment to our sport, quite frankly.
Yeah. Do you see him continuing on as the projected one and current world number one, or do you project this to change as we move down the season with the resurgence and the form that Diego's in?
I have a feeling that either Diego or Shibagi is going to get there. I know Diego was very close and could have got it this week if he'd won Black Ball, but I don't think he's far off. Asal has not really dominated recently. He's won a few events, but he's lost in the last 16 at TOC, lost in the last 16 at Black Ball. So yeah, he's not been sort of untouchable, put it that way.
Then next up is, for the projected that we had, was Ali Farag. Again, this is one of the situations where the unexpected had happened, but we had projected him 2, and he's currently ranked number 3 in the world. I think that's projected to also drop to 4 with Shibagi's performance in Black Ball. Also, a side question: what do you think of this weekly ranking change?
I can see why they're doing it. I don't love it just because there's so few changes on a weekly basis. it seems kind of pointless when they publish the updated rankings a week later and like two guys have switched positions and the rest is exactly the same. At least with the monthly rankings, you were sort of guaranteed to have a bit more movement and it was a bit more interesting to follow. But I also don't mind it. I think if it helps the structure of the rankings and the tour, like, gives it a bit more consistency if it's weekly, I'm fine with either. I heard an argument that they were doing it just because it was basically another news story that they could publicise each week. And I don't think that's the right reason to do it, but I don't have strong opinions either way.
Yeah. And so Farag obviously has been hit with the injury bug, which no one could have seen coming, but he's coming back and I still don't think he's fully recovered or something. It doesn't seem fully sorted, or he's just not back to match fitness, but even seeing him at Black Ball, he didn't seem like himself. It seemed like a movement was off, which is his biggest asset in my opinion. But yeah, I wanted to get your thoughts on it as well.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that even in his interviews, he's kind of admitted that he's not back where he wants to be or where he needs to be contending for these sort of events. Lost 3-love to Shibagi, which I'm not sure when the last time he even lost to Shibagi, let alone 3-love was. I think it seems like he's slowly going to make progress. So I think he mentioned that he wants to be fully healthy for Worlds in Chicago in start of May. So he's got like another 2 months to get ready for that. It's just, he's another guy that I do like on the tour, and yeah, I'm glad that he's not out any further. I think he already missed like 3 months of the season. So it's going to be tough for him to challenge for number one, both given that he missed the events that took place over that period, and then also if he's not 100%, then he's probably not going to be as capable of winning the events that he does play going forward. So,
do you think if he eventually, when he gets to the 100% mark, do you think he still might be the best player or top two in the world, or do you think that Diego and the form that Shibagi's also been showing?
Diego would be an interesting matchup. Shibagi, I don't know, it seemed like Farag had the edge over Shibagi recently, certainly the last couple of years, but whether Shibagi's back playing at a higher level than he was over those 2 years, it's hard to tell. Like I say, I thought that match on Monday between Shibagi and Diego was phenomenally high quality. Not sure that style of play would work as well against Farag, where you're just basically taking every ball in short. Well, not quite, but more or less. But yeah, it would be good I would love to see all three of them. Love to see Paul back playing better squash. I'm sure he will be disappointed with his results over recent months. But yeah, anytime you get the best guys playing at their top level, then it's fun to watch, unless it involves us all.
The dicks don't stop. So I guess for Farag, we can't really give him a grade for what he's been injured, and I think we can't really justify what he's done this season as a substantial letter grade. But wanted to move on to what we had as world number 3, Paul Cole, who was having an absolute phenomenal season last year. And I don't know if it's a dip in form. It definitely doesn't seem to be an injury, or if he's gassed out. I don't know what his reasons are, but he currently stands at 5 in the world, and we project him to be 3. Just wanted to get your thoughts. Is there anything in specific that you're seeing as holes in his game, or that opponents are figuring out?
I haven't seen enough of his matches, but just looking at his results, like, they're not what you would have expected a year ago, certainly. I'm just looking through like who he's played this season. So first tournament of the year, he played Qatar and lost to Abdullah Al-Tamimi, which would be a massive shock. Then he made the final of the Egyptian Open and lost to Farag, which is fine. Lost to Shibagi at the US Open, lost to Dasuki, lost to Shibagi again, lost to Inyao, the Singapore.
That was, yeah.
Yeah, and then lost to Dasuki and Joel in the last couple of events. So yeah, certainly not the results that I'm sure he's been expecting or hoping for. And also, if you go back a year when he was he was number 1 in the world, and was starting to look like the best player in the world. It's clear that he's not on that form. I'm not sure why. Like you say, it doesn't seem like there's any physical issues. It doesn't seem like his game has changed in any significant way. So I'm not quite sure why. Maybe guys have just figured out something that works effectively against him.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you were to give a letter grade to what Paul Cole's season has been so far, what would you put it as?
I mean, I suspect he always seems like one of his harshest critics himself, so I'm sure he's not happy. He's probably thinking like a C. I mean, he's still 5 in the world, so it's not like he's not dropped off the face of the earth, but I'm sure his expectations are a lot higher. I would probably put it at like a B, but I'm sure he expects nothing less than an A every time he steps on court. So.
And then wanted to go into, we had Diego Elias projected as 4, currently at 2, really narrowly missing out on that one spot at the Black Ball Open. But wow, he has progressed and matured. And I just want to get your input on what you think how his game has changed and improved and matured over the past couple months. Because I think the progress has been coming a lot earlier than we thought.
Yeah, he really impressed me. He's always been great to watch. He's always been smooth, but he's maybe a little bit fragile mentally. The only time I've really seen that this season was the match he played with Asal in Hong Kong, where the ref...
I thought you got robbed on that one.
Yeah, exactly.
Nonsense.
I agreed. But again, he probably shouldn't have let it get to him quite as much. But he's been great to watch. I love watching the TOC. And I watched a couple of his matches, and it was one of the tournaments that was streamed on like a regular plastic court. I think he played Tarek in one of the matches, and just the way he sort of glides around, you almost see it more clearly on those courts, just how effortlessly he glides around, applies pressure. Like, it's not easy to make those guys do a lot of work, and he seemed to be able to do it just by setting perfect length. He's taking the ball early. He's definitely deserving if he gets to number 1 at the moment, because I think in the last 3 to 4 months he has been the best player in the world.
No, I agree. Do you think there's any changes in his game this past season that you haven't noticed before?
I think his line hitting has improved a little bit. He's always been a clean ball striker, but maybe he catches side wall a little bit too much, or didn't quite get the ball through to the back of the court as cleanly. But that's happening, and he's just not making errors either. Like, he's able to take the ball into the front. He's maybe using the boast a little bit less. Don't know if that's intentional, but he always used to use that shot a lot, and it could hurt you, but it could also open the court up and leave him exposed a little bit. It feels like he's using the straight drop a little bit more than the boast these days.
I do know he used to rely on the post heavily with his go-to shots. Yeah.
Especially, I mean, he's always loved the forehand boast. I feel like the forehand drop is definitely something that he's using a bit more. But yeah, he's just not giving as many cheap points away, either by tinning or hitting loose drives that guys can then punish, or opening the court up too early at the wrong time.
Yeah. I mean, I guess for the letter grade for Diego Elias, it must be.
Yeah, he's definitely an A.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's disappointed. I hope that wasn't like his only chance and it slips away and he never gets there. I don't think that will happen, but it would be really unfortunate if you lose a match 12-10 in the 5th, and that turns out to be like your only chance in your career to get to number 1 in the world.
That is some dark stuff, Stuart. That is very dark.
And especially he had a match ball as well. But yeah. I mean, you can't be disappointed with that match because both of them played brilliant.
No, it was nice to see just everyone coming together and just saying how brilliant of a squash match that was. I don't think that's happened in a very long time.
Mostly because Asal's been involved. But
so we'll move on. We had Joel Macon as the projected 5th best player in the world at the time. Right now it's Paul Cole, obviously, but Joel Macon, his current ranking is 11 in the world. Talk us through what you think, what had happened in these past couple months. In my eyes, there was, I don't know if it was a drop of form or like an injury bug. Joel Macon's not the type of guy to explain what's going on in his life.
I think he's been injured from what I heard. Yeah, but you're right. Like, he's had some results that you wouldn't necessarily expect from him. Just looking at it now, like he's lost the first couple of couple of events. He lost to Diego twice. Lost to Shibagi. But then, probably more surprising, he lost to Mazen Hesham, which isn't terrible. But then he lost to Nicky Muller at the Tournament of Champions, which is a little bit surprising. Then he lost to Abugar, who was coming back. And then he won the tournament in Canada, the Canadian Open, beating Victor in the final. And then he had a good run at Blackball. So I think he's back to his form based on the fact that he won the Canadian Open and then made semis at Blackball, with a couple of good wins, beat Paul and Marwan along the way. And then he was 2-love up in Tarek as well and ran out of gas. But I think he'll start to move back up. I think he's down at 11 at the moment.
He is currently 11, and I'm sure he'll shoot back up with these past two tournaments, his performances. Yeah.
It might be tough for him to fulfill my prediction that he'll get to 5 by the end of the season, so he might end up letting me down on that one. But
he might have to just sweep all the titles, Stuart.
Yeah, that's one way to do it.
What letter grade would you give him on his season so far?
I mean, he probably views it, again, similar to Paul, he probably thinks it's a C. It's probably a B. I mean, he's definitely not excelling the way I'm sure he wants to, but he's always quite open about the fact that he's not there to make up the numbers. Like, he wants to win at least one of these big titles, and get to the top of the rankings if he can. So
yeah,
we'll see.
Well, moving on, I think this is a big name here, Mohamed El Shorbagy. We had him projected at 6, and he is currently at 4. I think by next week, or either right now already, he might be 3. But we have to address Shorbagy about. I don't think we shit talked him in the last podcast, but I think we definitely addressed his.
I think I might have. You might be innocent on that one, but I don't think I was innocent there. But yeah, he's been phenomenal. Like, he seems rejuvenated. He seems like he's obviously given a lot of credit to England squash and that transition. I always think that Shorbagy's just someone that likes things that are new. Like, he's working with Gaultier these days. It seems like he likes new ideas. He's always moved around coaches and never really stuck with the same guy. And I think he's just someone that, like, constantly needs new stimulus to keep him energized, to keep him engaged. But yeah, he's playing some of the best squash I've seen from him for years. The match with Diego actually reminded me of basically Shorbagy playing Rami back in the day, except the roles were kind of reversed, where Shorbagy was the one, like, firing it in from everywhere and taking risks, and Diego was more in the Shorbagy role. But they're just such entertaining matches to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think his touch is underrated. It's not talked about enough because of how strong he is and the power lines he hits. But wow, his short game was unbelievable in that Diego match, and he cut it short.
He's been pretty consistent all year. One of the most I don't know if you saw the team event that they had in New Zealand, where England played New Zealand in the final, and
that was crazy. Yeah.
Joel had beaten SJ in the women's match, which meant that Shorbagy had to beat Paul Call 4-love. It was games to 7, and he had to lose something like, 14 points or less. And he went and did it, and it felt, before the match started, you'd have said, "There's no way that can happen." And he was really, really good in that period, because he then won the actual New Zealand Open the week after. He then went to Singapore and won again, beating Diego in the final. He eventually lost in Hong Kong to Diego in the semis, but yeah, he's certainly rejuvenated and playing some of the best squash he's played in probably 5 years, I would say.
Yeah, I think his only not bad loss, but he did lose to Saul pretty convincingly in the Houston Open. Yeah. He seems to always take a different approach playing Saul compared to I don't know, it just seems the atmosphere is different between both Assault and seems like they love each other.
But that was a really interesting one just because of what happened the previous day with Marwan.
Could I get your take on that? On what you thought of that Marwan Assault fiasco? Is an understatement on what happened, but
I think Marwan was definitely trying to manipulate that situation. It seems absurd to me that the referee gets to determine whether a player can play on or not. But I've heard some stories where Marwan was essentially saying that he couldn't play on. Asal had injured him to the point where he had caused the injury and he should be awarded the match. And then when the referee decided that wasn't going to happen, Marwan suddenly made a miraculous recovery and was suddenly able to play. And the ref was like, well, you told me you can't, and I'm sticking by that. But again, I don't think that's the referee's call. If Marwan decides that he wants to go on and play the match, then he should be entitled to. That seemed like the referee getting involved in a way that he wasn't really entitled to. Or I don't actually know if he is entitled to or not, but it didn't seem like a referee should be making a medical decision about whether someone is fit to play on or not. In terms of the actual incident itself, it seemed like it was slightly dangerous from Asal, which doesn't surprise me. It seemed like he was sort of reckless, just took a normal swing, didn't really care if he hit Marwan or not. I think there's definitely a case to be made that Marwan overreacted.
Yeah.
And
I think that'd be fair to say.
Yeah, but again, I didn't watch the match. I don't know what happened leading up to that. As a standalone incident, it seemed pretty absurd, but maybe there was. I'm assuming there was other stuff going on because there always is with both of them actually. So
yeah.
But yeah, it would have been interesting to see where Shirbagy, Mohammed, fell on that one, because obviously he's been one of Asal's biggest supporters over the years, and suddenly there's an incident involved.
What do you think of him advocating for Asal that much? Do you think?
Honestly, I think he's going to regret it a little bit later in his career. I think he's going to realise that this is not just some young, immature kid that is going to grow out of it. I think fundamentally it's a personality thing with Asal. I think he's just not a nice human being. And I think the more it goes on and the longer it continues, the more Shirbagy is going to regret associating with him in such a positive way. That's what I think. I think they're also, at some point, their matches have generally been pretty clean and fair. I think at some point that's probably going to change, where there's an incident between the two of them, and I think that will also make Shirbagy realise that actually he should not have been defending this guy. He's not worth it.
But I think go back. So for Shirbagy's letter grade, you probably give a pretty high score for him.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be an A, because I know he's only number 4 in the world, and I'm sure he's looking to go higher. But I think in current form, you would say that he's certainly 3 or 2. I mean, in current form, based on Black Ball, he's 1. But in terms of consistency, he's in the hunt for world number 1 again, which is the first time that's been the case for a couple of years.
Yeah, I think the projections is, depending on how he does in the Canary Wharf, I think with Asal not reaching the final or something, and something with Diego, I think he does go up to the world number 1 spot. And I think his path to the world number 1 is actually easier than Diego's. So that's an interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a couple of. I don't think he's been number 1 since 2021. It's maybe not 2 full years, but he dropped to number 5 last year, and as recently as last month, he was number 5 as well. So
yeah, I mean, one thing Shirbagy always does is he does remind anyone who doubts him or has thrown shade at him that he's listening and he's heard you. Next up, I think we have Fares Suzuki, who we projected to be 7 in the world, currently standing at 10. My opinion, I think he's just being a bit stagnant with his career. I don't know. He's hit with another injury. I think he's torn his oblique, from what I've heard recently on his Instagram post. But I don't know.
Saw that he just pulled out of Canary Wharf and the other tournament in England. I think,
Yeah,
so.
and he had a feisty affair with Tarek Momin where he fully thought he got robbed in that match.
I didn't see that, so I don't know what happened there.
I think Tarek Momin had saved a bunch of match balls, but I think in process of saving, I think there was a claim that Tarek Momin had hit Dazuki, and he got a stroke off of it. Dazuki strongly claims that there was no touch, and Dazuki has gone to the social media as well, saying that he got robbed in that match. So he was unhappy with that recent performance. Currently at 10, though, what do you think of his current season so far?
Yeah, I'm just looking through his results. He's not had any terrible losses apart from he did lose to Altamimi, I think, in Singapore, but he's losing to good players. He's in that awkward position where he's outside the top 8 seeds, so he consistently has pretty tough draws in terms of like playing Asal in the last 16 in Qatar, and then playing Paul Call in the quarters, and then playing Joe Macon and playing Asal again. So yeah, it's just tough when we talked about this last time, like when you're not in the top 8 seeds, you really need a huge win just to make the quarterfinals. And yeah, it's hard to do that consistently. Like you could be ranked number 9 in the world and in theory play the number 1 seed in every single tournament in the first round or 6. Well, you get a bye and then play them in the second round at your first match.
Yeah, it is amusing to see how a lot of these tournaments, the draw is very similarly played out even from the beginning. So we're getting the same matchups after matchups.
I think the other thing to say about Dazuki, I think this is where him and Diego have probably differed, is that Diego seems like he's matured in terms of his attitude and just how tough he is in matches. Like I know he had the incident in Hong Kong with Asal, but generally Diego is much more mature in the way he approaches matches. He's able to stay calm and not get caught up in decisions and things like that. And it seems like Dazuki is still quite fiery in that regard. And I think ultimately that's one of the things that's hurting him.
He hasn't made that progress that Diego has. In terms of letter grade, what would you give Dazuki right now on his mid-season performance?
Probably a B. Like, he's not having terrible results. He's not winning those big matches that he needs to start winning to move up. And
do you foresee any changes happening anytime soon or not?
Well, if he's going to miss a couple of tournaments coming up, and then
not helping your projections.
Yeah, the next big one is British Open. So who knows if he's back in time for that. But yeah, I think until he sort of matures mentally and learns to deal with those situations when they happen in matches, it's tough to see him making real progress.
Yeah,
I'm sure he can get up to 9 or 8 or whatever, but I don't see him cracking like top 5 certainly.
Moving on, we had Tarek Momin. We had projected him at 8. Pretty close to this one. He's currently ranked 9 in the world. I suspect that I personally don't think at the level he was playing at the Black Ball he should be 9 in the world. I think he should be a bit higher. But he's had a mixed bag of season. What's your take?
Yeah, he's been pretty consistent. Again, he's beating most of the guys ranked below him. Not really upsetting too many guys ranked above him. Tends not to lose too early. I mean, just looking at again his results, he's made semis, quarters. Made the final of the Malaysian Open, but that was a slightly smaller tournament. Yeah, he's not really made. Don't think he's made the semis of any platinum apart from Qatar, which was the first event of the season. And even there, he lost to Victor, which on paper was a bad result.
So I guess he's just having the season you kind of projected, Stuart.
Yeah, I don't think he's dropped off significantly. I don't think he's as much of a threat to the top guys as he was 2 or 3 years ago.
Do you think his recent black ball performance has been an up in form, or do you think he kind of did get the luck of the draw of what had happened?
I think it was just a case of the draw opening up quite nicely. And like I say, he was 2-love down to Joel, but Joel just sort of ran out of steam. I mean, he played well against... he played Shabagi in the semis, right?
He played Dazuki. in the quarters, and then Joel in the semis, and then Mohammed in the final.
Played Shabagi in the final, but I think that was, like I say, more the draw opening up. He beat Dasuki, Dasuki came through against Asal, so that opened up that section of the draw. And then he got through the Joe making section after Joe had taken out a couple of seeds as well.
Yeah. And so how would you rate his performance in your letter grade so far this season?
I mean, probably a B, just sort of what you would expect.
Yeah. Stuart's just been handing out Bs left and right now on these players. no Ds.
Yeah, that's true. If you're top 10 in the world, you're probably not earning a D.
Fair enough. I think the next one is where Stuart got it really, really wrong. Obviously, this was due to unforeseen circumstances that we kind of caught on during that episode, but he did have Yusuf Ibrahim as the projected 9 in the world. With the current drop-off of points, I think he's dropped down to 40 now. I do not think he's at the 40 level, even as he's coming back from his injury. He does look pretty good already, and I only see that to continue to move forward.
I think he dropped from 15 to 40 in 1 week because of all the points he got from Windy City last year. So that hurt him badly.
That did hurt him. Have you been able to catch any of the games during his return?
I saw the highlights of one of them, one of his first ones back. I can't remember who he played actually, but it'll take him a little bit of time. I've heard reports that although he's back, he's not fully recovered. His issue is still ongoing. I think again it's a knee problem, and there's some concern that that's going to be with him for the rest of his career now.
Oh God!
And it's just going to be a case of managing it as best he can, as opposed to ever being completely healthy again. That's obviously pretty worrying, just given the way he plays. He's quite dynamic, and he plays in such a way that it would be pretty hard to protect his knee based on the way he moves and how much he's moving the ball into the front of the court.
That is tough to hear. All these Egyptian players struggling with the knee issues. It's quite the bummer considering how good they are.
Yeah, it's just I don't know what the solution is, obviously, but I hope he can get healthy and show some of the form that he started to show last year.
I think it'd be unfair to give him a letter grade on him considering he has come back. And I do think it's encouraging. I mean, I don't think the level's dropped off that much. He's had good results here and there. And I think also with the return of Abu Elgarts, he's kind of screwed a lot of people with how their run for the draw. But I think next, moving on, we have Mazen Hisham, projected at 10. His current ranking is at 8. He's had a pretty consistent season so far, I'd say, which is good on his part. I think that's what he's been lacking throughout his entire career. I know he had a lot of injuries, but he seems like he's healthy, he's strong, and he's fit. What's your take on him?
Yeah, exactly as you say. He's been pretty consistent. He's not had too many bad losses. He's struggling to get big wins against the top sort of 4 or 5 guys. I guess he lost to Miguel at the Tournament of Champions, which was probably an opportunity that was in the quarters. That would have given him a chance to get a few more points if he made the semis. He's lost to Marwan a couple of times, which again, for a guy that's trying to move up, that's probably one of the better draws that you can get against Marwan, although Marwan is also playing well. But you'd certainly rather play Marwan than Asal or Diego or Mohammed or Ali if he's fit.
It's a pretty good letter grade for Hisham, I'm assuming, for his season.
Yeah, I mean, again, he's not done anything spectacular, but he's not had any terrible results. So,
do you ever see him as a threat to the top 5, or do you think this is pretty much his potential on his capped potential here?
I think in terms of ranking, no, I don't. Just because, again, rankings reward consistency, and on any given day, I think he can beat any of those guys. in one particular tournament he might be able to do it two or three times in a row, but do I think he can do it 2 or 3 times in a row, like across the season? Probably not. Certainly that's not what he's shown so far.
Yeah.
And his squash is quite high risk, so he's relying on everything falling his way. I don't think his basic squash is like his length, his ability to just contain people in the back. That's one of the things Diego is able to do now. He's just able to win points in all 4 corners a lot better than a lot of guys, whereas Mazin still relies on the front a lot.
That's a good take on it. Before we move on to the women's, I do want to name a couple players that I think are dangerous. 2 players that are not included in this list because this was projected, but are in the top 10 are Marwan and Victor. Just wanted to get your take on their season so far. Marwan's really made a resurgence in form after working with Rodney Martin, and he seems to be really consistently performing in every tournament. And with Victor, I'm sure Harvard grad, a rival of yours. So interested to hear what your take is on his game as he's really moving up the rankings. And I don't know if his body just doesn't break down. I don't think he just plays every tournament out there.
Yeah, and he's playing really, really well, actually. I remember one of the first tournaments of the season, he played Ali Abu in the Nantes tournament. And that was just after I think he made the final in Qatar tournament. And then he went straight to Nantes, and Ali played him first round, and he just absolutely blew him away. Like, I was really impressed. He's obviously been very professional, and he's so hard to break down, but I've always worried about, like, whether he would have enough to hurt the really top players. But what I've seen of his game, like he's one of the players that I really admire, just in terms of how his game is always evolving. He always seems like he's adding something new to his game. His short game, I think, in particular, has improved. Like, he's much better attacking than even like a year ago when he was playing college squash. And yeah, he doesn't seem to have too many bad days, either physically or mentally. And I think that's one of his strengths, is that he's so consistent, that he's able to get big wins. If anyone's not playing at 100%, he's now at a level where he can basically beat anyone.
That's some high compliments for him. Do you foresee him just continue to move up the rankings as this season progresses, or do you think 7 is where he's going to be at 7?
It might be tough, just because, I mean, maybe he can catch Marwan, who's 6, but even I'm looking at the points, there's a bit of a gap. There's like over 150, almost 200 points difference, which is a lot. So yeah, he's kind of, I wouldn't say he's stuck, and I think he will continue to move up, certainly over the next year or two, but whether he moves up significantly in the rest of this season, I don't think that'll happen. But I didn't expect him to be top 10 this quickly.
I do remember you saying that, do you?
And he's definitely deserved it. I mean, he's not like sneaked in with like one lucky tournament where he got the draw opened up and he took advantage. Like, he's been the 7th or 8th best player this season, I would say.
Yeah. And then some other names I think should be good to put in the mix is the resurgence of Abelgar's return, also with Gawad's return. I think this is really entertaining stuff for the next couple months with them being back, and you never know with the likes of Miguel. He always squeezes in and just performs out of his mind in one of the tournaments, and I think it's great for the sport to see.
Miguel's been fast, like really, really good this season. Again, not someone I would have predicted or didn't predict. And he's still moving so well. Like, he kind of, even the guys that sort of stayed at a high level, you could see their movement and athleticism dropping off. Like, I feel like Nick Matthew, by the same age, he was just starting to lose a little bit of an edge. Same with Gaultier, but Miguel doesn't seem like he's lost anything.
I don't know how he moves through it, but it just seems effortless. It just doesn't seem hard on the knees at all. He just seems to be kind of like sneaking around everywhere. And to know how old he is, it's unbelievable the career he's having right now, and just being able to stick around.
And he doesn't seem like
be a threat.
doesn't seem like he's getting injuries or stuff. Like, again, those other guys that have played at that level at a similar age, they all seem to be starting to pick up little niggles here and there and would have to miss a tournament, or you would see them like bandaged or knees taped up before tournaments. But Miguel doesn't seem like he's got any of that going on.
Are there any other players that you see as threats entering into the second half of the season to the top 10, or that could really screw your projections here?
Yusuf Solomon. I mean, I think Joel at 11 it's just so hard to see who he's going to dislodge, but I suspect he's looking to get back in. Yusuf Solomon at 12 is there or thereabouts, although I think 12, just looking at the guys ahead of him, is probably about right.
Yeah.
Further down, Pat Rooney's had a pretty good season. Be interesting to see if he can keep moving up. Mohamed El Shabini is at his highest ranking again. There's a few guys, but in terms of top 10 potential, then I don't see anyone this season creeping in other than maybe Joel.
Yeah, I think the men's top 10 are pretty sold, but well, moving on to the women's side. I think a bit different with the women's side with the top 10. I don't think other than the top 3, top 5, I don't think anyone's really safe in that top 10 zone right now, especially with how the level of depth happening. That's what I think right now. Maybe Stuart disagrees with me, but I just think the depth is unbelievable right now. But yeah, I wanted to go into what we had projected again, just like we did with the men's. What have you thought, right, in general, though, of the season on the women's side of things?
I mean, the women's is kind of playing out how I think most people predicted, which is that there's still a big three that have shown themselves to be a level above the rest. I know Shabini just lost to Amanda at Black Ball, but overall they've been the dominant three again. Most of the big titles have been shared between them. I think all the finals have been between them, so nothing really surprised me there. I guess what has surprised me a little bit, I thought Taya might have moved up a little bit more by now. And Joelle has actually been really, really good this season, so that's a bit of a surprise, but not shocking. I mean,
unless Amina Orfi decides to just climb up the rankings, I really do think the top three are on a level on their own. But I do, interestingly enough, think Amanda Sobey does have the game to kind of worry the three on with her recent scalp as well. And I think she really did test Hania in that black ball semis.
Yeah, especially after beating Shabini the day before to then follow that up and go to 5 with Hania. But I watched that match and I didn't think, I mean, it's just testament to how good those top three are. That I didn't feel like Hania was playing her best, and yet she still managed to beat the number 5 in the world. So
yeah, going down the rank projected, we had Noor and Gohar projected at 1 and also currently at 1. So pretty spot on Stuart's end on his credibility, smashing both the world number ones for both men and women's side of things correctly. I mean, can't really say anything bad about Gohar's season so far. Just consistent as usual. I think she's miles ahead in terms of points in the rankings.
She is at the moment, but that could I think although Hanya's at 3, I think Hania might start closing soon. Although obviously winning black ball is going to help a lot. But yeah, she I mean, I think Hong Kong was the first tournament in over a year which hadn't at least made the final. So that's quite impressive.
Yeah, that was very impressive. That was a shocker. It's just her consistency, and I think. Do you think anything has changed in her game in the past couple months, or coming into this season, or she's relatively just maintained her level, which is already just unbelievably high?
Yeah, I mean, I think she changed a lot. Maybe a year and a half to 2 years ago. I don't see a lot that's changed. She's just continuing to do it really well. Like, she's just plays at pace that I was actually speaking briefly to Sabrina Sobey today, and she was saying that just how challenging it is when Sabrina doesn't mind a fast pace, but she just says the fast pace combined with the hard hitting is just catches you by surprise, even though you know before you step on court that that's what she's going to bring. It's still a shock.
So I guess there's only one letter grade to give Gohar with the season she's having so far. Moving on to Hania. Hania was our projected 2. I really don't think any of whatever our projections are and whatever their current rankings are, I think it's going to flip-flop as we go, and I don't think there's anything amazing about the prediction of who's at 2, who's at 3, who's at 1.
I still think that Hanya's having a better season. I think one of the reasons that Sherbini is still ahead of her is because she obviously got all the points from winning the Worlds last year. But I suspect, and I don't know if this is true, but I suspect if you just compared the points that they've accumulated this season, that Hania probably would be 2.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I mean, who knows though? Well, it seems like Sherbini always just shows up in the World Champs and collects her points, collects her trophies, and it just
it's the only tournament that matters, right?
Yeah, this is the only tournament, and it's the only tournament that she just consistently wins. But so I guess for Hania as well, do you think she's added anything in her game throughout this season that has caught you by surprise, or do you think she's just continually progressed the way you saw?
I think she's starting to volley a bit more. I always felt like the reason she struggled with Gohar for a while was because she found it really hard to volley against Gohar. And she's had a bit more, I know she lost this week to Gohar, but she's had a bit more success against Gohar. And I think one of the reasons is that she's able to volley even with the ball being hit that hard. She's not as uncomfortable volleying, and she's also able to take the ball in short a little bit better. And she's not just relying on her movement and her sort of defensive retrieving game as much. She's able to actually, and you also see that in terms of just she's able to beat some of the lower ranked girls a little bit quicker and easier now, because she can volley and take the ball a little bit earlier, more comfortably, and use the 4 corners and not just the back 2.
Yeah, she's rock solid in the and her results, other than that Sabrina Sobey win. So I guess Sabrina Sobey does have what it takes to crack in there as well. That was quite the victory over her. But other than that loss, I think she's had a very, very consistent season and really challenging Gohar up there. So I also with her can only give 1 letter grade, unless you think that Sabrina Sobey loss is detrimental to her letter grade of performance so far.
No, she can get an A. Yeah.
Moving on, we have Noor El Sherbini, who's partnered up with Gregor Gaultier this season, has changed in her coaching staff and her team, and our projected ranking was 3. She's currently at 2, and I do think she, as you mentioned, she will fall to 3 in the coming months with recent performances. But obviously, she's top 3 in the world, and she can challenge anyone. But any concerns on your end on how she's been performing?
No, she's had a pretty solid season. I mean, she's not won everything, but she's. I think her loss to Amanda was the first time she had lost to anyone apart from Gohar and Hamami for a couple of years.
Yeah,
I think Amanda actually was the last person to beat her before that, and that was probably 2, certainly over 2 years ago. Yeah, so she's been consistent. She's had a couple of wins. She won TOC. She won Grasshopper, which is slightly smaller, but it's not a platinum event. But she made the final of Hong Kong, made the final of US Open, final of Egyptian Open. Semis of Egyptian Open. But yeah, she's basically performing at her usual level, and I've no doubt that she'll show up and win the Worlds in 2 months' time.
As she always does. Moving on, we had Noor El Tayeb at 4. She's currently at 6. You said earlier that she has moved up to the speed that you expected her to at this point of the season. Do you suspect that she's kind of being stagnant at where she's at right now, or do you see her progressing upwards?
Yeah, I think I still feel like she is the fourth best player. I think she's the most dangerous for those top three. Like, it'd be interesting to ask them, like, who do you not want to play, and see what they say. But she had a few. I mean, Joelle King beat her. Olivia Klein beat her recently, who's having an amazing run at the moment. Playing some really good squash. So
I actually think she might be injured right now. I think that's what she pulled out against Olivia Klein.
Quite possibly, actually, because she didn't play black ball, so that would make sense.
So,
but again, I still think that she's the one player that the top three players probably fear the most in terms of who can upset them and trouble them.
Yeah. So, I mean, would you rate her current season pretty well, or kind of could be better?
Yeah, I'm sure she's hoping to get higher in the rankings, but again, if you look, she's steadily moved up the rankings from, like, I think she was 8 at the start of the year up to sort of 6 for most of it. It's really tough when you're not playing at the same level as those top three. That it basically means every single draw has a 4 seed, and then everyone wants to be. So at the moment, Joelle is ranked 4 and it's in that 4 seed spot. And I'm sure every single player in the 5 to 8 section wants to be in the same section as Joelle and not in the same section as the others.
Yeah.
And even if you get that spot, so you've got a 25% chance of being drawn in the section of the draw you want. You then have to beat a couple of good players to get there, because there's a few girls outside the top 8 that are dangerous. Whether that's based on the current form or overall consistency. And then there's still no guarantee that you can beat someone like Joelle, who is one of the best players in the world, even if she's not at the same level as those top three.
I was going to ask about Joelle, but I realized we'll address her as we go down the list here. Gina Kennedy, we projected her to be 5. I think that was the one that you might have been a bit off of. Obviously, this was also due to unexpected circumstances, but she is currently at 10 as she's kind of climbing back to the form that she was at last year. I think she had the injury bite, but any changes of opinion since we've last spoken about this on what do you think?
No, not really. I mean, she's basically my Yusuf Ibrahim of the women's predictions, that I was probably furthest out on. But again, seems like she had a number of different issues, whether it was with injuries and then health. She seems like she's back again and starting to get solid results along the lines of what you would expect. So I think she'll move back into the top 8. Maybe not as high as I predicted at 5, but I'm looking at the top 8, and I think she can certainly move up a few spots at least.
How do you rate her season so far in a letter grade?
Probably a C, just because I'm sure she didn't want to suffer those. I think it was an injury initially, and then she had some sort of medical issue going on. I think she also had. I think from what I've read, there's been 2 or 3 different things going on, and all sort of one after the other, which just made it tough for her. But yeah, recently she made the quarters at the TOC and then won in Cleveland, made the final of tournament in Detroit, semis in Cincinnati.
She just seems to love playing Rowan El Rabi. Every time they get matched up, which they seem to be matched up every time.
Although she's getting the better, like she's winning most of those matchups, it seems. So
yeah,
and that's a sign that she's back in that sort of top 8, top 7 sort of level.
Next up is Amanda Soapy. We had her projected at 6. She's currently sitting at 5, and she's had a great black ball performance. How do you rate her season so far and her recent performance?
Again, she's right where you would expect, sort of 4th through 6, I think is fair. When she's on her game, I mean, obviously a great win against Shabini, but I haven't seen anything from her. Just looking at who she's lost to, She lost to Gohar, Altayeb, Shabini, Hanya. Probably her only bad one was in Cleveland, where she lost to Gina. So yeah, I'm sure she's relatively happy, but then also not satisfied and looking for more. It's just really tough for everyone that's coming up against those top three to see how you beat them.
It's
and not
unbelievably
just once.
frustrating. Yeah.
Like Amanda's obviously done it in blackball, but then that was just to make the semis, and then she has to play Hanya. And even if she'd beaten Hanya, she'd
go hard.
Gohar.
It's an absolute nightmare.
Yeah. That is one of the advantages of being in the number 4 ranking spot and being seeded 4th, is that you only have to come up again. Like, you can get to the semis without having to beat one of them, and then you only have to beat 2 of them.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point to point out, how important it is to be the 4th seed and rank 4 for these tournaments. So, I mean, I think, would you say you give Amanda a B of the current season so far?
Yeah, probably a B+, just because, like, again, she's consistent. She's not got any bad losses, really, apart from, like I say, arguably losing to Gina is a bad result for her. But certainly in the bigger events, she's consistent. She's making semis and quarters basically every tournament she plays.
Yeah. Next person up is S.J. Perry. Her projected ranking was 7. She is 8, so kind of on the mix of where we projected her to be at. What do you think of her season? Because I'm starting to have my doubts on her.
I'm actually a little surprised that she's still ranked as high as that.
I agree.
Just looking at her results, she's lost to Tesney a couple of times. She lost to Sabrina Sobi. She lost to Jana Shiha. She lost to Tomato Ho. Lucy Turmel beat her. So yeah, it's interesting that she's actually maintained the ranking in the top 8 when she's lost. She's not even made the quarters of more than half of her tournaments that she's played this year, I think. She's made the quarters of 5 and lost in the last 16 of 5.
Do you think it's a fall off of form? Do you think it's...
Yeah, I think you would have to say that. I know she talked at Black Ball about having some issues with injuries, and said she felt like she was feeling better, and maybe it was just an injury issue that was going on. But she certainly hasn't been playing top 8 standard this year. When you see that she's losing to like Jana Shiha and Tomato Ho. Speaking of Tomato Ho, I don't know if you listened to the podcast with Conor O'Malley and Bill Buckingham, but Bill's favourite player apparently is Tomato Ho.
I didn't know what you're talking about.
And I met Bill for the first time at the weekend at CSA Individuals, and he's a funny guy.
Yeah.
I liked him a lot.
That podcast is very funny. You guys want to listen in on that? Yeah, she's one of those upcoming players. But next up, we have Rowan El Arabi. Our projected ranking was 9. I think she's moved up to 7. I think she's had a better season than what we had kind of projected. What is your take on her and the season she's having so far?
Again, another mostly makes quarters. She's not really done anything exceptional. She's lost to Georgina 3 times in a row recently, which I suspect just in the last 2 months she's played Gina 3 times and lost 3 times. But again, lost to some other players, like not bad losses by any means, but lost to Tina Gillis, lost to Satomi Watanabe, lost to Rachel Arnold going back to the Egyptian Open earlier this year. Mm-hmm. So again, you wouldn't really say those results are reflective of someone who's ranked 7 in the world. So it'll be interesting to see if she holds that ranking for too much longer, or if she maybe starts to drop off and lose points.
So you'd probably give her a B?
She might be ranking-wise, probably a B, but result-wise, maybe closer to a C.
Next up, we have, to round up our projected top 10, was Salma Hani. We projected her to be at 10. She's currently kind of dropped off to 13, but considering the level and depth, can't really blame her. It's that 10th spot is not safe to anyone. right now. But how would you rate her season so far?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. Again, if there's an issue there, she's had pretty up and down results. Losing to people. I mean, the first two tournaments of the season, she played Shabini and lost both of them 3-love, which fair enough. But then she lost to Tesney, lost to Satomi, lost to Tina Gillis, lost twice to Yatra Adele, which I have to say is
not a great result.
Weaker result. And then more recently, she's lost to Amanda Gohar and Gina Kennedy. So again, not terrible, and SJ, but yeah, she's probably ranked where she deserves to be. It's just whether that's because her squash has dropped a level or because she's just had a few tougher draws. But it actually doesn't look like the draws have been the fact. Like when you're losing to Yatra Badel, that's not the draw that's the issue. That's probably
it might be.
It's not. I'm not trying to be disrespectful there. I'm just suggesting, like, if you're losing to Gohar and then Shabini, and like there's not a lot you can do even if you are playing better. Mm-hmm. But it seems like she's getting favourable draws, but then not able to take advantage all the time.
Fair enough. Well, that rounds out our projected top 10. And before we wrap it up, I just wanted to hear any players that have caught your attention, because I think this top 20 is crazy. I think we have Olivia Fichter coming in, kind of ruining our top 10 projections here as she makes way. And there's the Gillis sisters right underneath that. And then we also have this crazy form of Olivia Klein, Tesney Evans coming back, and also Sabrina Sobey in the mix as well. Any player that you wanted to talk about that has impressed you this season?
I mean, the Americans obviously have done great. They obviously had the high of making the final of the World Teams in December, and pushing Egypt pretty close. And obviously being in America, it's great to see the strength of American squash. I'd be lying if I saw Olivia Klein's form coming, but it seems like it's just clicked. I watched a little bit of her play in the tournament in Philly last week, where she made the final and lost to Olivia Fichter. She played really well in the semi-finals to beat Nila Gillis. Mm-hmm. She just looks like she's much more disciplined, and she's fitter, she's moving well. She seems like she's added a couple of things to her game, and it's paying off. And then further down, it'll be interesting to see. We talked earlier in the CSA episode about Siva. She's obviously now basically done with college squash, so I'm sure she'll be focusing back on the PSA Tour, see if she can start to work back into form and get up the rankings again. I think she will. It'll just be a matter of how quickly she can do it. Nada Abbas has had some good performances, and the other girl I think I mentioned previously was Satomi Watanabe.
She's very good, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she's working her way right up the rankings. She's just outside the top 20, but I think she was, I think when we spoke, she was in the 50s, and that was sort of August, September time.
Yeah.
It's not easy to go from 50 to 21 in the space of about six or 7 months.
Yeah, Gina Kennedy has really numbed us to how fast people can move up the rankings, but that is quite the feat. And Melissa Alves also, Penn player, has really moved up the rankings as well.
Yeah, Melissa spends a little bit of time at Penn. She obviously played at Penn a few years back, and she still comes and does some training around Philly and comes to the courts. She's been quite good at hitting with some of her girls as well. So she's a really positive influence at Penn, and hopefully she can continue to do well.
Yeah, I think that rounds up this episode, guys. Again, thank you, Stuart, for doing this. This was a long evening for us, but I appreciate you doing this.
Fortunately, the season's over, and I don't have anything better to do, so you're in
I guess I'll just have to have you on more often. But yeah, that's it, folks. Thanks for tuning in.